I am so excited, honored, privileged to have this final session with Brandee and Tia, who are friends, mentors, inspirations, and they both serve on the NAAHL board. And so, yeah, first off, thank you both for your service, your leadership.
Thank you.
Also, thank you to Brandee. Citi is the generous lead sponsor of today's event, and so thank you again.
Yes, thank you.
I thought it would be great to close out with a conversation that kind of represents the NAAHL Alliance. This is about the public-private partnership. You represent a bank, you represent a CDFI, and we all are working together to solve this affordable housing crisis. But I'm just really curious, today was such an interesting day. I mean, I'm a little biased here. But I'd love to hear from you all. What surprised you? What was the big takeaway for you? Is there something that you're really gonna go home and chew on, or yeah?
I don't think, it surprised me, and it is a big takeaway, but I was pleasantly surprised. I believe we have more common ground than we have, given the last 18 months, realized. Everyone is talking about housing. It doesn't matter if you're blue or red or purple, young or old, everyone is talking about housing. So, Sarah, you have often said, this is our moment. And this is our moment, I think, we have across the board have seen where elected officials, policymakers have elevated housing. And so I think our biggest takeaway is we should all be leaning into this and rowing in the same direction so that we can increase the supply of affordable housing across the nation.
So I would agree with that, but I will also say what surprised me is that, and I did feel more optimism, and that we were looking forward instead of kind of looking back or thinking about what could have been. But I do think that there is a reality of extreme uncertainty that in all sorts of realms that we are facing, we're kind of in a, it's actually, we thought, I think, scheduling this event after the election, it would be a time of more certainty, so we would have more clarity about the path forward. I think every day there's something new. I mean, we have, let's just think, you know, you've got geopolitical uncertainty, which we don't tend to talk a lot about when we're talking about affordable housing, but it's going to potentially impact us. We've gone from political uncertainty to policy uncertainty. We certainly have regulatory uncertainty. And then we've got things that are bringing uncertainty that I don't think we really have fully absorbed and understand. Technology, AI uncertainty. What does that mean for our work and for the communities we serve? So I will just say, and the other one, the big one, and I was actually surprised it didn't come up a lot here today, because I do think it is so baked in and infused into our work. But the intentionality, the rollback and reset on DEI, and the intentionality that we have all brought with so much energy and intensity, in particular over the past 4 years, but for many years preceding that. I think we haven't fully, I don't fully understand the DEI reset and what that's going to mean for our work, particularly in this space. I agree 100%. Unfortunately, housing insecurity is an issue that affects all Americans, but let's be honest with ourselves. We have been working where in the areas where the insecurity is the greatest, where the wealth and income gaps are the largest. And the tactics and the language that we use to do this is changing. So that was my takeaway.
Can I just...
Yeah, this is a conversation.
Brandee could not be more correct about the uncertainty and how that uncertainty has a ripple effect. When you think about increasing the supply, what is the biggest challenge that builders and developers have? What is the thing that they want the most when they're going out and they're building, whether it's multifamily or single family? They'll tell you certainty. I need to know what the rules are, and I need some certainty. I need to know that I'm not going to get that lawsuit. I need to know that my financing is going to be there. If I'm going to take on this risk, there's certain things that I need to provide some certainty with. And unless we start addressing some of this uphill certainty, we will not get to increasing the affordable housing supply. And so I think that is a big picture as to how we're looking at this and making sure we're not just looking at it isolated, but we think about how it all works together and how certainty uphill is going to affect us downhill. And so that's very important that we do that. And then let me circle back to the DEI. I was talking to a gentleman earlier, and over my career, I may not have called it diversity, equity, and inclusion, but I was a kid that grew up in public housing, whose mother bought her first home when I was just going into junior high through a first-time homebuyer program, and was able to break generational cycles of poverty and send 2 girls to college with graduate-level degrees. This is the importance of housing, and I have, through a lens of lived experience, incorporated diversity, equity, and inclusion into everything I do, whether it's my operations, my recruitment, my programs. And until we start thinking about it like that and understanding people's lived experiences and meeting them where they are, we shouldn't have to talk about racial justice. We shouldn't have to talk about economic justice. We should talk about equity across the board, big picture, and building that across everything that we do, because then you don't have to have those conversations.
Yeah. I've said it many times, and I'll keep saying it. It's the lens, not a lane. And I think we've made a lot of things a lane or a box to check, and they become targets in more political times. I think for me, as I've been reflecting on today, it's just that cycle of things are the same and things are different all at once. And it's almost hard to keep up with, because, you know, folks in this room are coming from California, from Texas, from every region in America, to this little town. And this is such a quirky little town and a bubble in of itself. And I really enjoyed that last panel. I think for those who aren't in DC, to see that camaraderie across the aisle from Hill staffers is maybe sometimes startling. And even for those of us in the trenches, it's a good reminder. These people do go and grab beers after fighting tooth and nail in a room. And it's interesting to kind of, you know, be navigating that space. But then it's also hard. I mean, to your point, Brandee, these policies are affecting people's livelihoods. And we have the privilege of coming to conferences and sitting on panels and having careers where we are advocating or developing or whatnot. But these are people's lives really at stake. Their ability to be in this country, their ability to support their family, their ability to have shelter. And I don't know, I struggle with that sometimes.
Yeah. So what's the natural physical reaction when something feels uncertain, you're out of balance, you're kind of trying to dodge something, or you're trying to stabilize and get your equilibrium, right? Your natural physical reaction is you sort of plant your feet and you just stop for a moment and you just go to the basics. I'm just going to, for the moment, try to keep from falling. That's not, I don't think that's what I'm not using that metaphor because I don't think that's what we're doing in the affordable housing space. We're not trying to keep from falling, but I do think, and this thought came into my head after listening to the last panel. I think that we need to think about stabilizing as focusing. And my suggestion is that, and what I'm even doing back in my own, what we're doing in our own institution, is let's get really clear about how to prioritize. Let's focus. We can't be everything to everyone.
Oh, amen.
We just can't. We're just going to keep swirling.
Right.
So I really want us to get our equilibrium and maybe pick a few things and say, let's go for these wins. It doesn't mean those other things don't matter. It doesn't mean we can't build on them. But let's start and at least try to and think of this journey as a set of steps that we're taking.
And let's be okay with not needing to lead on everything.
Yeah.
Let's support our partners, and that we need to have the energy to advocate for many issues, and let's not fight with each other.
Yeah.
Can I, one of,
Tia's like, I have so many.
I have so many things and thoughts about that. When you think about affordable housing, and you think about the broad range of affordable housing, and I'm talking from homeless shelters to home ownership. Everybody has their niche, and everybody wants to go fight for their niche. And we have sometimes been our worst enemy because we have said every dime should be going to our most vulnerable and every dollar should go to permanent supportive housing, and that's all we should create at $900,000 per unit. No. Because you should look at your resources in proportion to your unmet need. Not, I know this person is vulnerable, and this might not be popular, but I know this person is vulnerable. But you just spent $900,000 on one unit that you could have had a shallow subsidy and created 10 units. I've done it. I've actually created 50% AMI units with less than $100,000 in subsidy in California. But when we start fighting with each other and don't focus on the 3 to 5 things and support the range of affordable housing, supply side, demand side, new construction, preservation, you don't have to be everything to everybody, but pick the 3 to 5 things that is going to support that as a continuum, as opposed to fighting with each other about who's going to get what piece of dollar. I often have a metaphor that I use. When I was a kid growing up, we used to have potlucks once a month. And I never remember being hungry as a kid. My mom was a single mom. I grew up in public housing. I never, ever remember being hungry. And I used to think those were the best. I used to look forward to the monthly potluck. Years later, my sister and I were sitting at the table with my mom and some of our girlfriends, and we said, oh my God, we love those potlucks. My mother just started laughing. She said, oh my God, the reason we had those potlucks is because we didn't have any damn money. And everybody was bringing whatever leftover crap they had in their refrigerator so you guys could eat at the end of the month. And I was like, I don't ever remember that being for hunger. If we thought about affordable housing as a potluck, as opposed to everybody fighting over their piece of pie, what change would that bring where we're talking about everybody getting fed as opposed to fighting over some crumbs? You can't feed an entire potluck off of one piece of pie. Resources are limited, so bring what you have to the table so that we can all collaborate and work on it together.
Yes, and you know, it's been very interesting to listen to so many folks and for us to prepare for another reconciliation fight. Tia and I were both in an administration through reconciliation and there are many Hill staffers and former Hill staffers in this room who were in the trenches with us on Build Back Better, which would have passed, you know, but it would have been the most sweeping housing bill in recent history. And it's been interesting for me to reflect coming back into the advocacy space now that I have the perspective of being advocated at. And, you know, I think we had a moment to really think transformationally about our housing finance system, about our delivery system. And we couldn't really think outside of the box that much because we continue to be so grounded in fear and a kind of culture of scarcity and tribalism. Like you have to dig in and protect your piece of the pie. And, you know, I do wonder sometimes when you aren't in a position to, you know, Build Back Better was a moment where it was like, you have, you know, a very short window to come up with the next big thing. I kind of feel like we have 4 years to come up with the next big thing right now. And I think we need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We have to fight to protect what is critical for the communities we serve. We have got to get housing for renters and homeowners in this tax package. And we need to all be working together for when there's another policy window for Build Back Better. How can we do it in a way that doesn't have more than 20 different sections of a bill? And how can we really change the way we're working to be more efficient, more effective, and more equitable?
So I'm going to put a little friendly amendment and say it.
Sure.
I don't think it's a 4-year time frame, and I'll say why I say this. I think affordable housing, when we think about social challenges, socioeconomic challenges, I think what is unique about the housing space and housing solutions, it is one of the few areas where there is actually a true capital model for doing this that is not 100% pure subsidy, 100% pure public money. You can leverage private dollars in a way that has the potential to create a win-win. I just think we are so close to it that we actually forget that we have a set of innovative solutions and a capital model for bringing those solutions to life that is very, very different. And I think that this is a moment where that public-private, that intersection those are going to be the ideas that get the most support.
That's a perfect segue, because we did want to talk about public-private partnerships, and I think it's safe to say in this next administration we're going to see a shrinking size of the federal government. And for everyone in the room, I think this is a challenge in that CDFIs are going to have to step up more, nonprofits are going to have to step up more, certainly for housing and civil rights groups that we heard from earlier are going to have to step up more, and the private sector is going to have to step up more. I'd love to hear from both of you. What do you think are the biggest challenges and opportunities for your respective sectors? Yeah. That's a big question.
It's a big question, but it's okay. We're
big.
Big
we got on our
people. Big personalities.
Big girl. Yeah.
So I just, let me say one thing. When I think about public-private partnership, actually, I think and about housing solutions, there's a third leg of this stool that's not here, and I want to call that out because I don't want to also live in a fantasy world here. You need public dollars, you need private dollars. There's a critical role for financial institutions, but the housing innovators and the housing advocates in this room, we also need philanthropy. Philanthropy is necessary but insufficient on its own to fill the gap that we need in the capital model, but it's an important piece. So I will just say, I think it's a three-legged stool that we need here. And frankly, if you care about education, if you're a philanthropic education funder, there are a whole lot more of those than there are housing funders. Well, you should care about housing, because you're not going to have educational success outcomes without housing, or
employers,
jobs, or
right.
health, the whole,
Right.
the whole range. So, that said, I think that I'm actually feeling, in a way, sort of optimistic that if the new, our new economic policy, new normal, will encourage and be enabling for the private sector to be able to, do what it does faster and simpler. Certainly in the financial services arena, how do we drive revenue? I mean, we're here to create revenue. And I think lending opportunities, banks are here to lend. That is to keep your money safe and to lend money. That is the primary purpose. So I'm actually excited that if we can increase revenue, we increase the opportunity for more capital to go into the system to fuel supply. And I don't think this is a bad thing. I actually think this is why the housing field is so successful. Financial institutions want to finance housing for three reasons. We talk about the big R a lot, regulation. That is a driver, but there are two other R's. One is revenue, and there are revenue opportunities. And the second is reputation. And I think that we have a moment in the banking sector, while the memory of the financial crisis is always going to be there, I think the thing that we always will remember, and for those of us that work inside financial institutions and see ourselves as change agents and champions, is how we need to make sure that enhancing the reputation of the banks by doing the right things, by doing things that make a positive impact in the lives of people and communities, real people in real places, will continue. So I'm optimistic, but what it's going to take for financial institutions is to make sure that we have people that are on the inside, that we are working collaboratively with all of you in this room to drive both scale for the things that we know will work and be willing to take some risk on the things that are new and innovative.
Thank you for saying that. I love those 3 R's. I took a trip earlier in my time with NAAHL to New York City, and I met with a lot of the board members on my board who work at banks. And I had this moment when I was entering one of the buildings, and it was just all these, I don't know, 20 and 30-year-olds all wearing their finance vests. And just like heading to work, and I was like, every industry has a uniform, first of all. It was like the Hill in New York City.
Yeah.
I almost had this, oh, this is what my life would have been like if I had made different choices. But I've been thinking a lot, we spend a lot of time as advocates in DC trying to educate Congressional Hill staffers who tend to have a commitment to public service and politics, why affordable housing matters. And I think we all have to do that with kind of the next generation of folks working in banks as well and in philanthropy to say, what I love about NAAHL is that so many of its members really are change agents and come with kind of that real heart and that real mission focus, but we have to put in that work to kind of cultivate that understanding.
Absolutely, and I do just want to clarify. I mean, again, reinvesting in communities is a requirement. It is a regulation. You can do this in a way that is putting out smart capital that is going to add value to the community and to the company. And again, I think it is one of the best ways that you can build trust with your stakeholders, with your clients. And so, it's a balance. And I think that the financial institutions that do it the best see it with this broader framework.
Right. Yeah. I think it's Bob Simpson who says you can do good and do well with the Multifamily Impact Council. And if we all started with that framework, you can do good, investing back into communities, and still do well, get a return on your investment. And I think the biggest challenge is going to be the education piece and having a set of facts and data that everyone agrees upon. We can all spin, but there are no alternative facts. Let's stop talking about alternative facts. Let's have a set of data and facts that wherever you are, you all agree on. And let's then take that set of data and facts and educate all of our partners, our private sector partners, our public sector partners, our nonprofits, so that we are all working from the same playbook so that we can do good while doing well.
We talk a lot about NAAHL being the honest broker of really trying to to develop and advocate advanced policies that aren't just pie in the sky. They can be transformative, but we also know they will actually work, and it's really just grounded in the practitioners that make up our membership. From your perspectives and after kind of listening to today's panels and in terms of the political landscape, what would be, one policy, or it could be a practice that you really do want to see more of in the field, whether it is, again, it could be a federal policy or a practice that you want to just see kind of take off in more markets nationally?
Well, I'll answer this 2 ways. It's probably not answering your question.
That's
but
fine.
It's okay. First, I will just say what I think we should never forget is that we've been very focused today on federal policy, but community by community, where we actually see the rubber hit the road and real impact is at that local level. So we shouldn't discount what can be done at the local level. And I think that every community does have different needs, and so we need to make sure that again, we're empowering those local policymakers, those local innovators, those local builders to work together. I think the other thing I'd like to see is this is the slight spin on your question. I think we need to do a better job of making the case for how health policy, education policy, climate policy, just basic economic policy, that housing is a piece of that it's not its own separate silo.
Right.
And I think if we were to look at how we've approached our policy work collectively, I think it's going to be more important than ever for us to not operate within, forget even the fiefdoms within our space,
right,
and all these other fields and sectors as well.
Right. If you think about it, housing cost is the biggest driver to inflation. like the single biggest cost to inflation. So if you really want to tackle the economy, if you really want to tackle cost, if you really want to tackle inflation, you really have to tackle how much people are cost burdened and how do we come together collectively and deal with that.
Yeah. I'm going off script here a little bit, but I just love listening to both of you, and I do think of both of you as change agents in your sector, but also leaders who kind of reach across sectors and inspire people across sectors. What when you wake up and you're like, I'm gonna be bold and I'm gonna be brave and I'm gonna lead change? Share a bit about what you're drawing from and how more folks can kind of like lead with that courage that you both do, and is such a joy to watch.
Well, I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and call somebody, even if I don't know you. I'll give you an example. The federal home loan banks and CDFIs have relationships. That is a whole untapped resource that is available for housing that I'm like, how do I, as this little small CDFI whose job is to provide mortgages on multifamily affordable housing, how do I access some of that capital? So one of the things we went and did is became a member of the Federal Home Loan Bank. And now we're getting ready to use our first product with the Federal Home Loan Bank. So if you have the Federal Home Loan Bank, which is the only GSE that is not into conservatorship, they have 11 bank systems. They're this little thing, they're not even federal, they don't provide home loans, but they provide liquidity to banks and CDFIs. So how do we, a private sector GSE not in receivership, bring some of that capital into the affordable housing space? So there are risk share programs in the government that are negative subsidy programs. Well, they don't want to do a whole lot of housing because they don't understand what the risks are. So why don't I get the federal government to come in and be that guarantor so that they can then bring in this money, and it already exists and we could already do that, and all we need is a rule. So
Something we were working on.
yes, sometimes thinking creatively doesn't mean you need something new.
Right.
Stop trying to go create something brand new. Look what's on the books, what is already working, where are the gaps, and let's focus on those 3 to 5 things.
And I'll say our space, our sector is actually pretty small. So what we think are the old ideas, they are definitely new to a whole world and a whole nation that's out there. And I really, in community development, it's like fashion. There are no new ideas. Everything old is new. It all comes back around. And sometimes it's an idea whose time has come. But I'll just give you what I'm going to personally, what I'm trying to do, and what is the biggest challenge in this moment is I'm realizing that my professional life and my personal life, I'm in a bubble. And I spend a lot of time with like-minded individuals. And, you know, it's really hard to make friends when you're in your mid to late 50s. It's not as easy to go out. I mean, I'm too tired to go out for drinks all the time after work. But I have, you know, that's part of what we need to do is to begin. I mean, I think this is the reality, and what and why I was so, you know, really appreciated today. We've got to be in dialogue. We've got to meet. We've got to find that common ground and discover that and deliver the message. We're all working towards the same North Star. And I would put forward, after today's conversations, it occurred to me that the North Star that we have at NAAHL isn't actually housing. I don't believe it's housing. I believe that our North Star is actually to ensure that there is economic opportunity and mobility. And if we have economic mobility, ironically, we actually solve part of the housing scarcity that we have, because people don't move up the economic ladder. They can't move on from the housing that they're in. So I think we need to clarify what is that North Star and make sure that we're using, I'll come full circle, using that to ground us during this moment of uncertainty and when we're out trying to build new relationships and and forge new coalitions.
That's great. I've loved today in the moments where we're all getting to mingle, and we'll get to do so much more of that just in a minute, that everyone in this room is only, 2 degrees of separation at most. And I think it goes to what you're saying, that this is a small space and there's so many opportunities for partnerships. I want to give you both the last word here. What call to action do you have for your peers in this room? You have policymakers, you have practitioners, you have thought leaders. What's your call to action for folks as we wrap up this conference?
I would just say to remember that we have really great solutions. We know we have things that work, and I do think that if we want to scale those things, we need to focus. I'll leave it at that.
That's great.
I really liked what you had to say about getting out of your comfort zone. We have so much division in this country. It looks like it, but really when you start looking behind the scenes, there's more commonality than we realize.
Yes.
Make yourself uncomfortable. Go across the street and talk to your neighbor. Pick up the phone if you're CDFI and call your bank. Don't be afraid to have those conversations, because if we're going to move the needle and if we're going to have common ground, politics is relationships, and relationships is what gets the needle moving. And so you have to talk to people.
Yeah. And these relationships are truly the best part of this job. Thank you so much for sharing the stage with me.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me actually just end. I hope my mic is still on. I just want to end and say that NAAHL, the affordable housing field, Sarah, we are so lucky to have you at the helm, and your leadership is absolutely critical. So
Yes.
thank you.
Meet the moment.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to the NAAHL board, our members, to our team. If you see Kelly, Sheree, or Christina, please give them a big round of thanks too. And we're gonna migrate over to the reception room over there. Senator Cardin will be here at 4:45, and then we will just be drinking and being merry. Thank you all.
Thank you.